how a nation that is $37 trillion in debt, $37 trillion in debt, and is operating at budget deficits every single year, how it is that we continue to just pour millions and millions and millions of dollars into the bank accounts of our ex-presidents. In all seriousness, I didn't know that it was as wildly, ridiculously out of control as it is, but we do now, especially the immediate former President Joe Biden. Joining us now to talk about the Presidential Allowance Modernization Act, which would cap pensions and perks for ex-presidents, is Damian Brady. He's the Vice President of Research for the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. Damian, good morning. Thanks for the time. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
I am blown away by some of what I have read about this, about some of the perks that Joe Biden gets. And maybe I'm just more angry about that because I despise Joe Biden as much as I do. But all of our ex-presidents are living lives of extraordinary wealth beyond anybody's real understanding, I suppose. Tell us about what we're paying these guys.
Yeah, so a lot of people aren't aware of these perks. So once a president leaves office, they're eligible for funding from taxpayers to help provide for an office. There's an office space. There's no limit on how big that office can be or where it can be located. And they also get funding for staff and equipment and supplies and subscriptions, which I would imagine includes newspaper subscriptions, things like that, news sources. And in total, we're spending about $5 million a year on all these perks for former presidents. And it dates back to the late 1950s when President Truman left office. It was believed at the time that he was hard on his luck. And so there are some obligations that the president has from office that linger on after they leave the White House. Dealing with their letters and their papers and other correspondence related to their time in office. So the idea was, well, Truman is having a hard time, so let's set up this program so we can protect the dignity of the office. And but then it turns out, in recent years, as his Truman's widow's papers were released, it turns out he had a lot more wealth at the time than was believed. And in the modern era, as you noted, all the former presidents are millionaires, and President Biden just signed a $10 million book deal for his memoirs. They have ample means of generating more income. So it's time to revisit these perks and trim it back so that we're not spending upwards of $5 million a year in total for all the former presidents while we have this massive federal deficit.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I completely agree because what you said about Truman is really interesting, that it was thought that he was on hard times. So, hey, we're going to help him out a little bit. He's a former president, blah, blah, blah. And then to come to find out not true. I wouldn't trust, quite frankly, any of the modern day presidents, honestly, to be honest about their finances. But so much of it is public. The $10 million book deal for Joe Biden, which is, I'm assuming it's going to be written with an auto pen. And then you look at the actual pensions. Damian, tell us about the pensions, not just for the presidency, but the pensions for the other positions, for example, that Joe Biden held while he was in public office.
Yeah, so former presidents will get a pension that's equivalent to the salary of a cabinet secretary. So for this year, that's just over $250 million. And so that gets adjusted every year for inflation. And Joe Biden also, he gets a dual pension because he served in the Senate for so long and was vice president for 8 years, and those 8 years as serving in a Senate office count towards his congressional pension. So if he was able to max out his possible pension, he gets an additional $166,000 on top of the $251,000 pension. So he makes more in pensions, roughly about $417,000 than the current president gets as their salary, $400,000. So it's time to revisit this stuff. And it's rare to have a dual pension like this, but let's set this up so we have reforms going forward to protect taxpayers.
Yeah, it's such an important point here, and obviously Senator Joni Ernst knows that. This is her act, the Presidential Allowance Modernization Act. Do you know where that is in the congressional pipeline? Is it in a committee, and exactly who is responsible for it, advancing it?
So far, she's introduced it, and it's been in committee, but they haven't taken it up yet. And, one thing to remember is in 2016, the House and the Senate passed a version of this legislation. And 3 months before President Obama was leaving the White House, he vetoed it so he could protect the benefits that he was about to get. So I think if we pass this bill, if Congress moves on this bill and puts it on Trump's desk, I think he would sign it in a heartbeat.
Well, I have no doubt that he would, because this is a guy who didn't even take his own salary. You mentioned that Biden is making more in his pensions than the current president is in actual salary. Trump obviously has donated his salary to the country, to help the cause. I wonder, and this is a little bit of an aside, Damian, but do you think President Trump will do the same thing with his pensions? Do you think he'll donate those as well, like he did his actual salary?
I would imagine he would, given his immense personal wealth and what he's done with his presidential salary this term and during his first term as well. So it stands to reason that he would continue to put the money back towards public causes.
And that would be a great example, again, for, I think obviously the other living former presidents to follow. And here's what I'm really curious about. I'm looking at, Obama and Clinton and Bush and obviously Biden. And first of all, their own personal wealth is probably not dissimilar from Joe Biden's. They all had massive book deals and made all kinds of money on the side and so forth, and their massive pensions. They don't need these things from us. What about the widows of deceased presidents? Former presidents, because obviously in a lot of pension situations, the spouse of the deceased pension holder receives those benefits going on after their death. Is that going on?
They receive a portion of the pension, not the full amount. There's a percentage. We have information about that on our website at ntu.org. And they also are eligible for some franking privileges, which is postage, basically. And that's all gets should be reported in federal budget data as that comes out.
Okay, and I'm sorry. What committee did you say this was sitting in right now? It hasn't been taken up yet, but what committee?
It's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
But
I'm just curious because I want to put a little pressure on those folks. Yeah, it's one of the things that I hope that constituents would talk to their representatives who might be on that committee and tell them, hey, pass this thing. Again, these people are rich. They have more money than they will ever be able to spend, and their families. They have generational wealth. They don't need to be taking a $37 trillion in debt nation into further debt because of this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Damian.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer bill, and it has passed before with wide bipartisan support. So now is the time is ripe to do this because we just had a very large tax reform bill providing tax cuts across the country. So now the number one focus in Congress needs to be on reining in excess spending, and this is a small example of spending, relative to other programs. But you got to cut programs like this, then you got to take a look at some of the bigger programs. So every little bit along the way will help reduce the burden on taxpayers going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the double dip of the pension by Biden, people like Biden, if you've been a senator, you get that pension, and you've been a president, so now you get that pension as well. And they, and on top of, by the way, you don't have to spend any of the money that we're giving you in pensions because we pay for your office space and all of the other things that you listed, in your post-presidential life. So it's an extreme example of, quite frankly, of greed that I think you're right should be a no-brainer to get out of Congress and get signed. And I guarantee you President Trump will sign it because, again, he's the guy who's already turned down his salaries. Damian Brady, Vice President of Research for the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, online at ntu.org/foundation and on social media at NTUF. Damian, thanks for coming on and shining a light on this for us. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. And I just checked this with the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. So get hold and let's get action on this bill.
Beautiful. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Damian.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.